Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to the Falcoholic Podcast's Falcons vs. Bucs Week 5 preview. I am joined by my co-host Alan Strk, and also joining us is a very special guest from Pewter Report. He is JC Allen at JC Allen NFL on Twitter. JC, how you doing today?
Doing great, man. Season's in full swing here. We just passed the first quarter-ish because it's not even quarter anymore. But, I'm just excited. Football's here. Talk football. Great little rivalry here in the NFC South to get into this week. And as we talked about before, fight for first place. Whoever wins this is first place in the division. And I don't think many Falcons fans would think that going into week 5 would be a possibility. But here we are. So it's exciting.
Exactly. Yeah, I know it's certainly surprising to us. I bet it's almost as surprising to Bucs fans. There's got a lot to talk about here. Surprisingly good matchup, I think. Also, of course, with us, Alan Strk. Alan, how are we doing today?
Fantastic. Really looking forward to this matchup, even though the injury news has been a bit concerning. And we're going to try to figure out what's going on personnel-wise, because as we're recording this 5 o'clock on Thursday, and a couple things have happened Falcons-wise in the past couple hours.
Yeah, I know JC's a bit short on time, so we're going to get into the meat of the game preview first, and then we will cover some of the roster moves the Falcons made today. But we like to start things off looking at the I think we usually do the Falcons defense first. So we'll do the Falcons defense versus the Bucs offense, starting with the secondary. Obviously, the Falcons have A.J. Terrell. They've got Casey Hayward, who's been a nice addition opposite Terrell. The slot has been very much a work in progress with a lot of guys alternating in. Former CFL All-Star D. Alford has been getting more run there. He had that game-clinching interception last week. Maybe we get Isaiah Oliver back. And then, of course, the Falcons have those two young safeties with Jalen Hawkins, who's playing well, and then Richie Grant, who's looked like maybe one of the better young safeties in the NFL this year. We know the Bucs weapons, especially Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and Falcons fans know the other Bucs weapons really, really well, and Julio Jones and Russell Gage. I know the Bucs offense hasn't been firing on all cylinders so far, but how do you feel about those matchups, like the Bucs receivers against the Falcons secondary?
I feel pretty good about it. I think A.J. Terrell will probably shadow Mike Evans for most of the game. He's really turning into one of the premier young cornerbacks in the league. He can do a bunch of different things on the defensive side. He can make plays on the ball. He can, give you lockdown coverage as a corner in man and zone. So I think A.J. Terrell versus Mike Evans is going to be a really good matchup. Otherwise, in that secondary, I was really high on Richie Grant coming out last year. So it's good to see he's progressing well and nicely for the Falcons. But if the Bucs are at full strength with their wideouts, with Russell Gage, who's been limited in practice today, with Chris Godwin, another guy who's limited, Julio Jones, another guy who was, you guessed it, limited in practice. If all those guys are able to go and Mike Evans is out there, I think that the Bucs should be able to pass the ball. Part of the problems with the struggles on offense the first couple weeks has been they want to be balanced. That's the biggest thing. They want to be balanced. They want to run the ball. They haven't found much success outside of week 1 running the ball. And last week, they were down, but it called upon it. And Brady said today in his press conference, listen, we know we can move the ball through the air. We know we can be effective there. We're trying to be balanced with the running game as well. So if it comes out to a point where it's time for them to air it out, I like the Bucs in that matchup against the secondary. Now, I think, it could probably be a quiet day for Mike Evans. He'll probably put up one of those weird stat lines where he's like 3 catches for 15 yards and a touchdown or something like that. And it'll probably be a back shoulder fade in the end zone, his specialty. But other than that, like I don't. I think if it becomes a situation where the Bucs are throwing the ball to win, I think I like that matchup a little bit more than I like the Falcons' young secondary against them.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something to keep an eye on. Alan, what do you think about that matchup? I think I agree with him that it's a tough one. I think when the Bucs wide receivers are healthy, that's probably the best group in the NFL. So tough matchup.
Yeah, at full strength, nobody could contain the Bucs. It's just a matter of can you generate pressure because we know that offensive line is a bit shaky. I think what I'm most curious about is just I've seen them use Mike Evans more in the slot, particularly against the Chiefs. And we've also seen A.J. Terrell shadow receivers. So I'm wondering if Terrell goes in the slot, will they move Terrell? I mean, if Evans goes in the slot, will Terrell go there? Because that's such a tough matchup. Because say we want about Mike Evans, like he's not someone that necessarily creates separation, but he's just like so savvy, like he's just so physical. And Terrell in the past, I think that there's one knock on him is that he kind of can struggle against bigger receivers just because those receivers know how to use their leverage. We saw week 1 Michael Thomas. So I'm most intrigued by the matchup and see how much man the Falcons will play, because I just think it's such a dangerous game playing man against a team like the Bucs, because the Bucs just create so much mismatches with their personnel.
Right, Brady will cut the soft. He'll cut that zone, that man apart once they get separation. Even playing zone's tough because you can find the open spot. So, I don't need to tell you guys how good Brady is throwing the ball. It'll be forever etched in your mind.
I mean, we've seen it how many years now.
Well, we need the Falcons. We need the Falcons to win one of these two, so they can at least have one W against Brady before he retires. But will be this week. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But the next matchup that I'm looking at, you mentioned the run game. That's been an area where the Bucs have really struggled. Last year they were okay. This year, I think 31st in rushing. As someone who owns Leonard Fournette, he's been an okay asset. He's getting the touchdowns, even though the yardage hasn't been there. But how do you feel about the Bucs run game's ability to match up with the Falcons run defense, which has been fairly average in terms of the league as a whole?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is obviously Grady Jarrett. You got to get good push on Grady Jarrett. I look at the Falcons roster, and they've got collectively they work well as a team, but there's nobody else on that defensive line that I look at and it's like, oh, you really got to watch out for this guy. You really got to watch out for that guy. He can really blow up plays and destroy things for opposing teams. So, I think if they can get a hat on Grady Jarrett, and look at this has been preached on both sides, and we'll get to the Bucs defensive side too. But on both sides of in the trenches and on that line is, hey, hat on hat and win your matchups. And they're going to try to use Grady Jarrett on Luke Gedeke, the rookie left guard, and Robert Hainsey, the first-year starting center, a ton. I think that's if you're going to use Grady somewhere, that's where you're going to use him, and you're going to use him for not only blowing up running plays, penetration, all sorts of different situations, and maybe with some twists, some stunts, and some confusion to really test that Bucs offensive line. Otherwise, I think there's nobody on that team, on that defensive line that scares me going up against Tristan Wirfs. I mean, there's nobody in the league that scares me going against Tristan Wirfs. He's just been that dominant. And Donovan Smith's working his way back. He's a little healthier now. So I think at the tackle position, you're pretty set. I think at right guard, you're pretty set. It's going to be another tough matchup with another tough defensive lineman like, Kenny Clark and Chris Jones before them, Daniel Anamata. Now you have another guy, Grady Jarrett. So that's where, I get a little nervous in that matchup. Not nervous, but a little worrisome in that matchup because they like to run a lot up the middle. Leonard Fournette doesn't run a lot of outside the tackle runs. And if Grady Jarrett's going to be up there destroying plays in the process, it's going to be hard to get that running game going again.
Yeah, that's a good point, especially, talking about the Bucs offensive line. There's been a lot of turnover there. I know we'll get to that as well when we talk about the pass pro, because it's a similar situation. Alan, what do you think about the Falcons defensive line? Obviously, we're going to talk about the Falcons did just cut Anthony Rush unexpectedly, who was their nose tackle. So I don't know what the plan is there, but we were
30 minutes ago.
Yeah, like 30 minutes ago. Yeah. So what do you think about the Falcons defensive line ability to sort of limit the run game of the Bucs?
I mean, they're looking even more undermanned now, and I think one of the biggest issues last week we saw against Cleveland was just Michael Walker, linebacker, not just missing tackles, but also like not understanding like gap discipline. Like there were some big runs, particularly the Nick Chubb running back, where he just didn't identify the play. Like he just looked very slow processing it. So I am very concerned about the Falcons front seven, but at the same time, that's nothing about the Bucs running game has really encouraged me. I think they're very predictable when it comes to running on first down. I've seen Tampa beat writers like become very frustrated with that. They also run a lot of duos, so they are pretty predictable. But I think you could get away with being predictable against the Falcons just because I don't think they have the talent in front to really stop anybody. So right now, there's a lot of uncertainty with this defense, and I think it starts with just how poorly they played, albeit against a very good Cleveland team. But even in general this year, they haven't really inspired much confidence.
The name of the game is shut down those first down runs, like you call it. You shut down those first down runs, you force an incompletion on second, third and long is where this team has struggled. So,
Interesting.
you have to, and like I like a lot of the Falcons' young pieces. The problem is they're still young pieces and they haven't grown in that role. I really like what they did in the draft with Ebiketie and Anderson and Malone. I love those three guys coming out, but they're still young. They're still finding their way, and I don't think they're going to be impact players for this matchup at least. Maybe down the road, at the end of the season, but for this matchup, yeah, I think the Bucs should be able to get the ball moving on the ground a little bit better. I don't think this is a 127 yard Leonard Fournette game, but I think they should be able to put at least 100 yards on the board together as a team.
Yeah, and that would probably be one of the better games for Tampa Bay this year, certainly on the ground. I think, certainly some of it last week especially had to do with, of course, the Chiefs, getting out to that big lead early. That's obviously going to limit your ability to run. I don't think they're going to put up 3 yards rushing this week against the Falcons. So, but week 1, 152 yards. So, I mean, they have run the ball well when they've been in a favorable situation. It's not that they can't, but how that sort of plays out probably going to impact that matchup a little bit more in terms of can they get out to a lead or are they chasing points all game. Yeah, I mean, the pass protection, sort of a similar situation here. I know Godicke has been sort of the weakest link so far. A lot of expectations for him, considering that he had to come in as a rookie and start. It seems like Hainsey has been okay filling in for Jensen, and of course Shaq Mason. We know he's a really good run blocker. It seems like he's been okay as well. Have there been any sort of weak links in the pass protection? And how big of an issue has the new offensive line been so far?
There's definitely been some issues, but Brady gets the ball out so quickly. Like he's just insane with his ability to just read, react, and get rid of it. His ability to feel the presence of the pocket and move around and again get rid of the ball before it collapses on him. So he's made up for a lot of that. But yeah, Gedeke has struggled. Hainsey has struggled. In certain reps in both running and passing. So, they're going to have to really step up their game. And that's why I mentioned, using Grady Jarrett, who got a sack last week, finding creative ways and confusing ways to get him over those two guys, or maybe one-on-one matchups against Gedeke is going to be key for the Falcons to really generate pressure. Like I said, I don't see the pressure coming necessarily on the outside from the Falcons, but interior wise, everyone wants to say the easiest way to rattle Brady is to get interior pressure. It's the same thing for any pocket passing quarterback, not just Brady. But specifically when you have a guy like Grady Jarrett, who is as good as he is, if you can find those creative ways to get him matchups on Gedeke and Hainsey, that's going to be the way I think they're going to be able to disrupt him the most. Just looking at this team, maybe with some creative blitzes coming from the secondary as well, some delayed blitzes and stuff like that. But as far as interior pressure from linebackers, if Grady can open some holes for those guys to get through, then yes. But again, just looking at that defense, they've got some young pieces. They need to grow. I don't think there's anyone on this team other than Grady and Terrell that that the Bucs are really game planning and preparing for.
Yeah, the blitzing has been where the Falcons have had the most success generating pressure. Brady traditionally holds up very well against the blitz, but with a bit of a weaker interior, there may be some opportunities there. I expect them to test that and try to rattle him early. What do you think about what they'll do, Alan? Do you expect a lot of blitzing? Do you think they're going to try to play straight up? What do you foresee happening in this game?
What's a little bizarre, I remember week 1 they had so much success blitzing, particularly with Walker and Grant, and then I feel like it's been kind of reduced the last 3 weeks. Either it's been reduced or it just hasn't been overall effective. But I do wonder, just given the secondary, it's a bit of a lopsided matchup. Does Dean Pease just go guns blazing? I feel like he has been a little bit too conservative for someone with his reputation. So, I do wonder, was he going to use linebackers? Maybe Troy Anderson, who's been getting more reps. And I think he's actually looked pretty good, particularly against the Browns. I thought like he made a couple of nice plays. Maybe he gets more snaps and try to utilize his speed. But ultimately, I think if they're going to blitz, Richie Grant is probably the weapon that could cause damage. Because I always see, like with the Bucs, I don't know if it's like a foregone conclusion, but I always feel like their running backs just aren't good in pass protection. Maybe just like watching Ronald Jones all these years. But it's Ronald Jones, Fournette kind of struggles. I don't know about the rookie running back. I just feel like their Bucs never have a running back that could block. So I'm wondering if the Bucs could put that.
Fournette looked really good. He had a really
Okay.
egregious miss last week, but he's looked really good. And
Okay.
throughout those 2 games, other than the Cowboys game, and in the Cowboys game, that block heard around the world. That
Oh, that chip on Parsons. Okay.
Parsons. But I mean, he's really kind of turned it around, and I think that we've
Okay.
seen that as he's become more of a 3-down back where he doesn't need to come off the field because of his pass pro. Rashad White, the rookie running back, he's pretty good at pass pro. He might still have some rookie lapses, but they feel comfortable enough to put him out there. And Keyshawn Vaughn, their 3rd-round pick from 2 years ago, I think they feel comfortable enough if he's going to step in at any minute. So, but I still think you can, Richie Grant is a good bet to try to maybe get there and do some confusing blitzes, delayed blitzes with the secondary. It's going to be their best bet other than Jarrett to get to Brady.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah, switching over to the offensive side, the Falcons' offense has been surprisingly much better than last year's version, even without Matt Ryan here. Marcus Mariota fitting in pretty well. The passing, of course, has been inconsistent, but the Falcons have gotten a lot of upgrades in terms of their weapons. Obviously, Drake London, one of the best rookie receivers. You got Lamade Zaccheaus, who's really stepped up as sort of like the big play threat. Kyle Pitts, will he play? We don't know. Hasn't necessarily been heavily involved, but obviously a threat at all times. How do you feel about the Bucs secondary's ability to match up with the Falcons' weapons? I think Carlton Davis left briefly last week, but it seems like he's going to be able to play this week.
Yeah, he had a shoulder stinger. I think, trending in the right direction. Yesterday, he was full participant. Today, he was limited. So definitely monitor tomorrow's practice, see where he's at. But I think he's good to go. Looking at these Falcons weapons in the receiving core, and I'll include Kyle Pitts, who I know you guys will get into a little bit more. Missed his 2nd straight day of practice with a hamstring. Going to be tough to see if he goes on Sunday. If Kyle Pitts does not go, man, I am not really worried about what the Falcons bring to the table. I like Drake London. I think he's going to be a fine young wide receiver. But if he's going to be going up against Carlton Davis, you guys have seen what Carlton Davis can do against receivers. You've seen what he can do against Julio Jones. And I just don't know if Drake London's in that caliber yet where he's going to be able to really get the better of Carlton Davis. Now, one play or two here, I mean, sometimes it's all you need, but I think Carlton has the ability to shut down Julio Jones. Jamel Dean has been one of the better cornerbacks. Going into last week's game, he was the number 2 ranked cornerback in all of football per Pro Football Focus. I think he'll be lined up with OZ for the most part. I'm not trying to say his name for the most part, and he's got that speed to keep up with him. So that will be an intriguing matchup to watch. If Mariota tries to force anything down that way, Dean's already has 2 interceptions on the year. So everybody else, man, I just look at the Damari Bird, Hodge, Edwards, Bernhardt. Like none of those guys look, even the backup tight ends and Fisker and Hesse and you guys turned Felipe Franks into a tight end. Like none of those.
Still waiting on it.
Yeah, we're still waiting. Yeah,
none of those guys to me really scream we need to worry about them. Yeah. So I think the biggest the biggest thing that's going to hurt this team's passing ability is the loss of Cordarrelle Patterson. I mean, he was so explosive as a wide receiver. When you got him the ball as a running back, you put the ball in his hands in the passing game, and we saw what he did last year to the Bucs. 2 touchdowns on the ground through the air. I think it was both of them were passing touchdowns.
Yeah,
right?
I remember he broke a couple tackles.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's a very explosive guy. Not having him out there is going to be huge. Very high on Tyler Algier. Just kind of looking at what he did. He was a bit of a factor in the passing game. Only had 1 catch, but it did go for 20 yards. So, we'll see if they utilize him more in that situation. And that turns into, those plays are dangerous because Mariota, one thing that Mariota has that Matt Ryan didn't have, and why I think there's a little more success, is he can break contain and he can go. He can turn it up if he needs to. Didn't really do it last week, but throughout earlier in the season, he's had some pretty sizable runs. And I think when plays break down, if he can find an Algier, guys are closing on him, find an Algier on the dump off, and he turns that into a 20-yard gain. That's a situation where they could hurt the Bucs. But as far as matchups in the secondary, they're going to throw the ball. They're not going to end up with 0 passing yards. But I just think that the Bucs secondary matches up much, much better than, unfortunately, what the Falcons would like going into Sunday.
Yeah. Alan, you have any thoughts on those matchups as well? It's definitely a difficult opponent in terms of the pass defense there.
Yeah, I think it ultimately comes down to what Arthur Smith's going to scheme up. Like Arthur Smith has done a good job of utilizing play action, using like max protect, which they're definitely going to need max protect going against the top Bulls defense. So I think it's just what Arthur Smith schemes up is going to be the biggest breaking, like what's going to pretty much determine the game, because you can't put these Falcons receivers against the Bucs physical corners and expect them to win on the outside, maybe London. It's just the mismatch is there personnel wise. Like you could just see talent discrepancy. Like I'm really impressed by what the Bucs have done in their secondary. I think Logan Ryan's been a fine addition, and we all know by Antoine Winfield how much of a playmaker he is. So, Arthur Smith, he's been creating some magic this year, but he's gonna have to go above and beyond in this one.
Yeah, and it looks like Logan Ryan probably won't play this week, so you guys will get that break. He's dealing with a foot injury. Keanu O'Neal will probably step in at strong safety, and then
man, our guy Keanu, forever Keanu.
They'll move Mike Edwards over to free safety and keep Antoine in that nickel spot, I think. But I just did my own Pewter Report podcast over at Pewter Report TV on YouTube. Check that out if you guys want to. We did kind of a breakdown and talked a lot about OBJ because that's the story of the week. Yeah. But anyways, I talked about if the Bucs were going to miss Logan Ryan one game this year, this game is it, because Keanu O'Neal, as you guys know, can be that hard-hitting safety. He's good against the run. He's the guy that if you're gonna lose Ryan for a game, this is the game to lose him against, because I think that's going to be a big part of what the Falcons do is try to run the ball. They've been successful at it, and they're going to try to do it again this week.
Do you think Murphy Bunting's going to get more reps? Because I saw he had that interception Sunday night.
No, not unless there's an issue with Carlton Davis. He's strictly a backup, and that was kind of right place, right time. Mahomes trying to make Mahomes throw, and he just kind of read it a little bit. But he's a playmaker, but he's not the slot experimentation with him is over. Jamel Dean is, like, as I said, been playing as one of the best cornerbacks in the league, and you're not going to bench Carlton Davis or Dean for him. So if there's an injury, maybe he comes in, maybe they see him a little bit in the slot, but I highly doubt it. I think he'll probably stay on the bench unless there's an injury.
Yeah. That brings us to the big matchup, which is the Falcons' rushing offense against the Bucs' run defense, which has been historically one of the best in the league. This year, closer to average. Yeah. So what's the story there? Why have the Bucs sort of not been as good against the run as they have been in years past? And are you worried at all about the Falcons' ability to grind teams to dust with their run game like they have over the past couple weeks?
It's funny because the Bucs right now are 12th in the league, allowing 106 yards a game average. They've typically been in that top 5 around like 80. So literally they let up about 25 more rushing yards a game. And like, it's not even a huge impact, but it is a huge impact because of the way they've allowed it. Just, talking to defensive line coach today, Casey Rogers, poor technique, poor fundamentals. It's funny, and I was talking about that. It's funny that we're talking about guys who've been in the league for 4, 5, 6, 7 years playing with poor technique and poor fundamentals. Again, like, so there's going to be a huge onus on, hey, we need to stop the run. And it hasn't just been last week where they let up over 180 yards on the ground. It's been throughout the first couple of weeks of the season. They have struggled in that first half of the game to really contain the run, and then they turn it on. Second half turnaround. We've talked about that in all 3 of their games before the Chiefs. The second half turnaround to where they've really limited not only the running game but also the passing game. We didn't see that against the Chiefs, but they're going to need to do it from the get. It's slow starts is what we were talking about going to the Chiefs game. We saw another slow start. And again, I think that game would be completely different if the fumble on the kickoff didn't happen. I think we're talking about a much different game. I mean, the Bucs still only lost by 10 points in that game. So they kept themselves into it. But, I think when you look at this running defense, they know what to do. They've done it for years. It's not like it's not like the personnel has changed too much. You still have Vita Vea there. You're missing Sue, obviously. You're missing Akeem Hicks out to injury. JPP's no longer there. But even last year, he was more of a liability than a strength. You have a more athletic, stronger guy in JTS who needs to, him and Vita Vea, I think, are 2 guys you look at and say, wow, they've really struggled. Vita Vea has been pushed off blocks, has been moved off blocks, single blocks. Creed Humphreys had his way with him. JTS has been, not as strong in the run game as we like him to be, as we thought he would be. So it's going to be huge. And you mentioned, Alan, a lot of play action, and the Bucs need to be very careful on that play action, because all we've talked about this week is what's up with the Bucs run defense. What's up with the Bucs run defense? The Falcons can run the ball. The Falcons can run the ball. If they start to get fooled by play action, and that allows them to start making easy throws, that's going to be a difficult situation for the Bucs to get a handle on too. They can't overly commit to the run where they're letting on play action plays and on running plays where they're letting up easy throws because they're all in on that run game, especially across the middle of the field where the linebackers will hang out. So I look at what the Falcons have. Like I said, I was very high on Tyler Allgeier coming out. I liked him a lot. Caleb Huntley is another guy who is really kind of making a name for himself after being a free agent last year and coming in. Super high on Avery Williams. I know he's not your running back, every down running back. I loved him coming out of Boise State. Special teams menace. He had a punt return last week for 18 yards. I think he had a rush for 20 yards or something.
Yeah, 21. Yeah,
21 yards. I really like him. So finding creative ways to get those guys the ball is going to be the name of the game, and having them really kind of pound the rock. Again, the biggest loss is Cordarrelle Patterson. The Bucs have struggled with him. Specifically last year, not having him on that team is going to be difficult. But at the end of the day, I think the Bucs have to turn it around, right? You can't start the season 0-3 at home, and you can't fall into a 2-3 hole and lose out first place in division. So I expect them to come well prepared. I expect them to execute well. It's going to be a tough matchup. I think they still have the guys that are able to make plays in the running game. It's just going to take, and this sounds boring, and it's exactly what the coach told me, fundamentals and technique, and playing your assignment, doing your job, not trying to do too much. And we'll see if the Bucs can do that on the defensive line this week, and the defense to really limit the strength, I think, of this Falcons team. Because that offensive line isn't great in pass pro. Let's call it.
Yeah.
They've gotten better, but last year was a monstrosity.
Yeah. No team leads league in max protect formations more than the Falcons. So Arthur Smith's masking that as best as possible.
Right.
Yeah. They've got Chris Lindstrom, obviously terrific, the number one guard according to PFF. Jake Matthews, we all know he's a very reliable pass protector, but everywhere else, you want these guys run blocking. So, and they've done a really good job of basically on a lot of passing plays, just run blocking. They'll make it look like a run play. They do that with the play action a lot, and sometimes it ends up working out better than them running pure pass sets. So whatever works, I guess. But yeah, I know you're short on time. You have a prediction for the game before you take off?
Yeah, I'm still kind of working on it. I want to see tomorrow's practice report before solidify it. But right now, I think the Bucs can find a way to score points on this team. Just looking at the matchups and everything like that. So I got the Bucs scoring around 30 points, 31 points. But I think the Falcons can find a way. Like I said, if the Bucs sell hard, especially early in the game on that play action, and allow easy completions, if they have trouble containing Mariota, which I know he didn't run wild last week, but he can at any time. They can definitely move the ball and put some points on the board. So I think right now, tentatively, I'll go Bucs 31, Falcons 17.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. All right. Well, we appreciate it.
Always play better in Atlanta than they do in Tampa. So, I mean, if this was Atlanta right now, I'd probably 31 to 27 because they always make it a bit more of a contest in Atlanta. But where it's at Ray J, they can't lose 3 in a row at home. They just can't do that. And they're playing for first place and playing for pride at this point, after last week's showing. I think the Bucs pull it out.
All right, guys. Well, he is JC Allen at JC Allen NFL. JC, thanks for your time. Really appreciate you. And enjoy the rest of your day, man.
Absolutely. We'll have to do this later. Week 17, week 18. 17.
There we go.
Yep. I think it's the last one.
It is. It's week 18. TBD. We don't know when it is, though.
Hopefully it's meaningful for both teams.
Yes, that's the hope. Yep. All right, man. Thanks so much.
Pleasure, man.
Talk to you.
All right, Alan. Well, I think we covered most of the main bases in terms of the matchups. I mean, how are you feeling about this one? I think it's obviously one of the tougher matchups the Falcons have faced this year. So how are you feeling going into this one?
I felt more optimistic about 24 hours ago until the Kyle Pitts and Anthony Rush news. It's just hard to see as much as I'm loving what Arthur Smith's doing with no Kyle Pitts, because Kyle Pitts creates the mismatches. He makes defenses scheme to stop him. Like he opens things up just across the middle of the field. So he's not able to play. It's hard to see how they move the ball through there. And then I just don't know who's going to see extended snaps now that Anthony Rush is out, because I don't think Horns looked all that good. And it's just a bunch of guys.
Yeah. It's going to be tough, especially, like you said, if Kyle Pitts is out, and losing Cordarrelle Patterson is big. But I do think that the Falcons find a way to somehow keep this close, right? Because they've done that every game this year. They've found a way to do it. Really, it's about, how does this running game look without Cordarrelle Patterson? Can they take advantage of a Bucs run defense that hasn't been great? Can Marcus Mariota get better as a passer, get more consistent in this one? That's sort of the big questions to me going into this one. I mean, do you think the passing game will be more of an impact part, even if Kyle Pitts is out, considering that the Bucs have tended to play so well against the run, and Falcons are probably going to have to put up points in this one?
We could talk about the receiver matchups, but like we also have to address, I think, one of the bigger elephants are like Marcus Mariota was a major liability last week. He missed a decent amount of throws. He looked jittery in the pocket. I thought the interception, Drake London could have fought for the ball better, but like Denzel Ward essentially ran the route and Mariota hit him in stride. So it's just, and now he's going to get to defense that loves the blitz. Like we know Todd Bowles brings it. We've seen Devin White and Levante David wreck plays in the past against the Falcons. So no, it's a very concerning matchup just based on what the Bucs could do from a pressure standpoint and how their corners play. Like it's going to take, like Arthur Smith's really good. It wouldn't surprise if they use play action 50% of the time, run a couple bootlegs, use a couple max protect, get Parker Hesse chipping. Like that's what it's going to take, because someone like Shaquille Barrett could wreck games. Just Bucs have game records up front. I know they haven't played quite up to expectations, but it's still a team that you have to hold in high regard.
Yeah. I mean, the Bucs have not been sharp, but this just feels to me like that inevitable game where they get right, and the Falcons are unfortunately the team that has to be the one to get right against, as always. I mean, I don't think it's going to be a blowout or anything like that. I do think the Bucs probably, assuming the wide receivers are back, it's just going to be hard for me to see the Falcons keeping this Bucs team under like 30 points. So I think 30 is a good number for them, but I do think the Falcons will score more than expected. Like probably they're going to keep it within a score, like they always do this year, and I think that will continue. So I think I would go like 31-24, the Bucs on top here, but it's just not a good matchup for them really on either side. Their hope is probably to like grind it out, like that's get a turnover.
Control the clock. Yeah, time possession is going to be really key, even though it was absurd last week. They only had 24 minutes of the ball, and they still managed to win and run for over 200 yards, which is just one of the most absurd things you'll ever see in a game. But yeah, this is the type of game where they really have to just kind of get Mariota in third short situations, or just kind of avoid third downs. Like just try to duplicate what you did in the second half, which I know is very difficult going against this Tampa defense. But look, they can be got at. I think one of the more alarming things was like New Orleans really had success pounding the rock against them. Like, if for whatever reason, I know Akeem Hicks was struggling. William Golston's not quite the same. Like New Orleans was just running all over us. So that was like the first sign where I was just like, all right, this Bucs defense might not be the same. Maybe they're aging a little bit. Then we saw what the Chiefs did, but it's just you look at the Saints, but in particular you look at the Chiefs. So the Chiefs have 3 Pro Bowlers on the offensive line. Like they have maulers, as well as the Falcons offensive line is playing. I'm still kind of in the middle where it's just like, is it just matchup based? Is it just Arthur Smith putting them in positions, running 21 personnel with Parker Hesse and Keith Smith making great blocks? Like I'm not sure how improved like the personnel is, even though I will say like Drew Dahlman, Kelvin Garrett coming off outstanding games against Cleveland.
Yeah, they're better. I don't know if they're good enough to take down the Bucs and like really be a contender for leading this division. Mm-hmm. But again, like they've also made their they've made these last few games close by taking advantage of mistakes from the other team. On special teams in particular, they've been really good. They've managed to create some turnovers every single week. So those are always the sort of secret equalizers to every game. Like if you can get a fumble or get a blocked punt or, take advantage of some Bucs mistakes to keep this game close, and then you just grind it out and don't give them a lot of possessions, that's probably the formula for them actually coming away with a win in this one. It's certainly within the realm of possibility. I mean, I think the 9-point spread might be a little aggressive against the Falcons, but I do think it will be within a score, I guess.
So what'd you make of the Anthony Rush news now that we have time to discuss it? Did you see it coming? Have you heard any reports?
No, there wasn't anything about it at all, which is especially bizarre because Anthony Rush hasn't been like an impact nose tackle, but I thought he was a solid one, and they don't really, other than Timmy Horn, who has he's a UDFA, hasn't been terrific, certainly. They don't really have anyone else other than Timmy Horn to play nose. Maybe they're going to go to just more lighter down linemen. Obviously Taquan Graham and Abdullah Anderson have been sort of playing well, and you have Grady Jarrett too, so maybe they're just like, we like these guys better. We're going to go with this style, but I don't really know what's going on. Maybe it means they're in the process of bringing in one of these veteran nose tackles that we thought they might have been sort of interested in the offseason, like a Brandon Williams, Linval Joseph, or something like that are still out there. But at this point, I don't really understand it, to be honest. Like they sort of are creating a hole here, so maybe there's something going on that we're not really aware of.
Yeah, like we're not privy to the news, so it's like, all right, could be disciplinary, like we don't know what this conduct issue, but it's just the fact that it's on a Thursday when it's like you're truly prepping for a game right now, like you're fully set on preparing your game plan. It's just like now you're cutting a starter. It's just like there's something to it.
Yeah, there's something there. I don't know what it is, but I have no idea.
Yeah. I do like that you mentioned Taquan Graham, though. I think he's been one of the standouts this year. And I'm still not sure if he's someone you want to rely on, 35, 40 snaps a game, but man, he's bringing it both as a run stopper and as a pass rusher.
Yeah, I think you like what he's brought. You certainly like what you've seen from Arnold Ebiketie and Lorenzo Carter too, who are playing a lot. And unfortunately, I think the one big disappointment has been Ogundeji, who I think has struggled the most of like any of their defensive front players.
Missed a lot of tackles last week.
Yeah, and everyone sort of did miss a lot of tackles.
Yeah, this is true.
So it's Nick Chubb. Like, so some of that is obviously just that Nick Chubb's great, but you certainly don't like to see it. Michael Walker, he offers you a lot. Really good tackling is so far not even on his plate, but
he's got some Deion Jones to his game.
Yeah,
from a negative standpoint, unfortunately.
Yeah, he does have better size than Deion Jones, so I think with him, it's something that can be corrected with proper technique and just taking better angles. But any other comments before we wrap up today on the sort of the state of the team? Because I know you missed the last two shows, so how do you feel right now?
I think it was this match because I know we've been kind of doom and gloom, understandably so, because the Falcons are a pretty sizable underdog. But I do think one big encouraging thing about the defense is how well they've done against screens this year, particularly last week. Not last year, last few games, but particularly against the Browns. Like Lorenzo Carter, I know he hasn't quite got the sack numbers, but like he was just his awareness and just play recognition of this understanding where the screens were going to develop. Like he had multiple plays where he was getting after him and Grady Jarrett, just making those hustle plays. So I think Carter's been a steady contributor, and we talked about Ebiketie, had a big game. He's got a big task going up against like Wortham Smith, but I think these are types of games where he's gonna get that valuable experience. So I do like the fact that finally we're seeing some promise with the edge rushers, because it's been a long time coming. So that's something. And I hope like I mentioned before, Troy Anderson gets more reps, because I think he's starting to prove himself. And I know Walker's a 3-down linebacker, or Sean Evans is kind of thumper, but if they could get Anderson 15, 20 snaps a game to, for now, as he acclimates himself to NFL, I think that would be great for his development.
Yeah, I think that I like how they're sort of mixing him in a little bit at a time. I think that's certainly good for his development. He hasn't played a ton, but I think every week he's sort of taken a little bit more on, and as a coverage player, he certainly has extremely high upside as a pass rusher as well. And then I think with him, it's just like you got to get his tackling sorted out. His angles, just help him process more. But those are things that you just learn by playing linebacker too. And like this is a guy who's only played linebacker for 2 years in his entire career.
Right.
He played quarterback, he played running back, and then they were like, "Hey, can you play linebacker?" He's like, "Yeah." And he has, like, he's an NFL linebacker now. He certainly doesn't look like a bad player. I think he's like even in like the high 60s according to PFF now overall. So like that's pretty good for like 4 games into Troy Anderson's career. I mean, this is a guy we weren't sure we'd see until like late in the season actually playing defense.
Right.
So I certainly like what we've seen. I think he's only played like 40 snaps total so far, but more and more every week.
Last day before I do final predictions and sign off, we have to, of course, talk about the reunion of all reunions. Julio Jones, Russell Gage, Keanu Neal, Deidrin Sanat, who people forget about. Shout out to John Ledyard for posting that clip. I had no idea Deidrin Sanat was on the Bucs. Like, sometimes you need that. Like, I had no idea Tack McKinley was on the Rams until ESPN showed on Monday night. So sometimes you get that information. But how do you feel about those 4? Will if Julio scores, will you give him a little clap or absolutely not?
I can't until he retires, and then comes back to the Falcons. Then I'll give him all his props again. But while he's on the Bucs, he's the enemy, so he doesn't get any claps from me. Yeah.
No claps.
Yeah.
But, it looks like he's gonna play though. I know he was kind of a non-factor against Kansas City, but and there hasn't been much. Maybe because he's kind of limited right now. He's not doing interviews, but I don't know. Maybe because this game's in Tampa, not in Atlanta. When it's in Atlanta, maybe there'll be more, I guess, attention towards him. But it's been kind of quiet so far this week.
Yeah, it's been interesting that there hasn't been more. I agree. I think if this was like Dimitroff and Quinn, still there'd probably be more because it's like that he was, they were there but this coaching staff has never even like had him. Like he was like barely involved here before they traded him, and they don't really know much about him. So I'm guessing that's why it's a little bit quieter. But
and also Tom Brady's in the news. We only need to discuss why, but Tom Brady
maybe Tom Brady distracted. We'll see on Sunday. So if anything, he's probably going to just redouble his football efforts. So we're probably not going to get any benefit from him being distracted.
Tom Brady. Life. I thought he looked good against. Did you watch the Chiefs game?
Yeah. No, I thought he looked good.
Yeah, like he still has a lot of velocity on those throws, and of course, look, he's gonna get hit a lot just because he can't move around the pocket. Like he got blindsided pretty bad, but I think that was probably the best performance I've seen because I've watched about 3 Tampa games this year, and I watched Dallas, I watched New Orleans. The only game I missed was the Green Bay one. Like they've been on TV a lot, so it's hard not to watch the Bucs. So I've gotten a good gist of it, and like I don't know, the offense is starting to get in rhythm. So it's just a matter of can the Falcons ultimately run the ball. I think that's what's going to determine if this team is going to be very competitive or if it's going to be lopsided. Falcons, doesn't matter who's running the ball, just they got to set the tone, and I think Arthur Smith just has to continue putting up great game plans and dialing up those plays that catch a defense off guard because it's Tampa defense there as bell test as it gets.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough, but if they can run the ball well and continue to do so, like they have done against some very good run defenses, then they might be able to keep it close. And then if it's close at the end, anything can happen. If it's within a score, it's 50% chance basically, according to statistics. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, what do you think? What's your prediction, Alan?
I'm going Tampa Bay 34-17. I hate to be the buzzkill, but look, I had the Bucs going to the Super Bowl. I think this team is absolutely loaded. I know they haven't quite played up to expectations, but I just love their roster, and I'm just very concerned with how Mariota played last week. I just think, he just looked very rattled.
Yeah,
this
is a tougher opponent too. So.
Yeah, and it's just he doesn't handle pressure well. You just know when Todd Bowles smells blood, like he's just gonna get after it. Like that, I think that's my biggest concern. And just no Patterson, potentially no Pitts. It's gonna be a real struggle. But I think I am encouraged about the running game, and I do think this defense could make a play or 2 here. But besides that, I think this is just a challenge that the Falcons just can't be at this point at their rebuilding stage.
Yeah. You guys, you heard it here first. Alan Strk, hater. He, does predicting the Bucs to go to the Super Bowl. Big time Falcons hater, Alan Strk here. So.
Hey, they play the Niners next week, and I love the Niners too. So next few weeks, folks, look, Falcons got some big challenges on their hands. But don't you worry, when they play the Panthers, man,
big time,
double digit victories there.
Yeah. No, I think it's going to be a tough 3-game stretch here for sure. And I do think they find a way to keep this a 1-score game because I think that's going to be their mantra this year is like, we're just not going to get blown out. Like last year we got blown out too much. We're just going to keep things within 1 score. Maybe they don't win a lot of those games, but they're going to make the other team sweat a little bit. And that's all we can ask for sometimes.
They did in LA, which was very impressive.
Yes. Did enjoy that, guys. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up here. 45 minutes in. I want to thank Alan for coming on today. He's at Alan Strk on Twitter. Anything you'd like to plug before we take off, Alan?
Well, I just wrote a huge piece about Arthur Smith, so definitely be sure to check that out. I think going forward, I'm going to try to do 2 articles a week, but this week I just did like huge op-ed feature on Arthur Smith and how I think his vision's starting to become validated. I just thought last Sunday was a real special victory, and I just got in that flow, just like, man, I want to put this something together that's special, and the feedback's been great. So thank you for people who read it, and if you haven't, please check it out.
Absolutely. Terrific stuff there. I started reading it and then I was like, oh, this is like serious long form. So then I had to table it for later because I only had like 10 minutes while I was eating. So I was like, okay, I'm going to come back to this. But it did look very good. So I will be sure to check that out. And you guys should too. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. You guys can see all my stuff on the site. We'll also, of course, have all the shows you can handle coming here on the Falcoholic Podcast and Falcoholic Live. Next up will be the live post-game show following the game on Sunday, hopefully celebrating another win. I'd love to get that 3-game streak going, but, possibly not, maybe likely not. We'll see. We'll see how it goes, but I will see you guys there for that one. Definitely like, subscribe, leave a 5-star review if you're so inclined. And if you're interested in supporting the show, you can check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live for access to those exclusive perks, including early access to all the episodes like this one. On your podcast platform of choice. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will see you guys next time on the Falcoholic Podcast. For myself and for Alan, have a great night, folks.